Many of us think of Africa as one entity, but in reality it's a vast continent, somewhat unknown beyond Libya and the North African territories. Well, Africa incorporates 54 countries, all distinct from each other. Africa has the potential to become the world's largest free trade area during this century. With a combined population of 1 billion people, it hosts some of the fastest growing economies in the developing world, in some cases exceeding the economic growth of many Western countries. No wonder corporations from around the world, including Malta-based companies, are looking at Africa as the next frontier. Our guests today lead two Maltese companies that have been active in Africa for years. Chris Muscat is the CEO of Hudson Holdings, that distributes Nike and other top brands to 24 countries in Africa. And Karl Aquilina is from Salvo Grima, a company that runs a logistics operation employing 80 people in Rwanda. Chris Muscat, Karl Aquilina, welcome to International Insight. I'll start straight away with a bit of an introduction of what your companies do and have been doing in Africa for the last few years. Karl.
First of all, thanks for having us. Great to be here, Joe. So basically, as a group of companies, we've been active in, let's say, Africa since the early 80s. Like many other companies, the first, let's say, experience was going to Libya. That was, let's say, the generation before the current generation in the business. We are in two different areas mostly. The first is distribution of FMCGs, where we basically distribute for multinationals such as Unilever, BAT, and these kind of companies. And the second area is in travel retail, where we basically operate what you would call a duty-free shop, what you would expect to see in an airport or a seaport, in places where people travel. So those are our two, let's say.
And where about in Africa, Karl?
So our footprint basically today is Libya, Tunisia, Rwanda, and Djibouti, and obviously we're looking at also potentially other countries to enter. Mostly focused around East Africa at the moment.
Great. Okay. Chris, you have a long history in Africa.
Yes. First of all, good morning and thanks for having us. Okay. We've been doing business in Africa for a decade. Actually, our first foray to Africa, believe it or not, was Nigeria. So it's a long story, but to cut to the chase. Alfie I found a pitch for Morocco, and instead of giving him Morocco, they gave him Nigeria. They said, hey, it's still Africa. The difference is very big between them. But we've been doing business out there in Nigeria for probably a decade, okay, in and out. So we went as distribution managers to assist a local company. But basically our business is, we are distributors, primarily we're distributors of sporting goods, of brands, sportswear brands, okay? So our biggest one is Nike, where we distribute to around 34 countries in Africa. Okay. We do other sports brands, we do Converse, we do Vans, North Face.
And you've been distributing Nike and others in Africa for many years already, no?
Yes. So coming to that, but first we started as distribution managers.
Okay.
So first we're the third party in between, okay? The local, the brand, and we were the managers in between.
Okay.
This didn't succeed because what happens is the local partner suddenly thinks he's strong enough to go directly with the brand.
Okay.
And they start messing up everything. So we have to intervene, and then the brand ultimately took the decision and said, look, we work directly with you guys. You set up the business directly. We don't want to deal anymore with the local partners. So at least we proved our expertise on that. So now we are directly the distributors for these countries.
Exactly.
Okay. So our majority of business is sports, which is probably around 60% of our business and distribution, but we also do retail. Okay. So we have direct operations in Morocco, in Algeria, and in Nigeria, where we operate retail. In Morocco, got around 21 stores. Okay. We do fashion, we do sports, so we do Mango, we do Tommy, we're opening Calvin Klein. We obviously have Nike stores, we have Urban Jungle, our own franchise. So we have quite a significant presence.
And the retail side, you manage yourself from here?
No, we have offices in countries. So in Morocco, we've got about 150 people.
Okay.
In Algeria, a smaller team. We've got only 3 stores at the moment, another 2 opening, but an office of around 20 people, plus the retail staff. And Nigeria, we opened our first 2 stores this year. We opened a Nike store and an Urban Jungle in Lagos. Okay. So I have an office and obviously retail complement.
Yeah. Okay. Quite an extensive operation, no? That goes.
We were in Libya extensively. We had around 20 stores we used to manage because it's a different setup in Libya, which obviously has we've stopped everything there for a couple of years now. And now we're going to Kenya, so we're venturing into Kenya now. So what we want to do is, these are our footholds into Africa. So we use them to be direct retail, but we can't be direct retail everywhere. It's too widespread and everything.
And was it a transition like from your experience in Libya to Africa, or did Africa happen independently?
No, it happened independently.
Okay.
Libya was management of retail, pure retail, and different operations, fashion, sports, We've been in Nigeria for a long time, 2006, again, with local partners. Doesn't work out.
Okay.
So we had to go direct. Now we are with a local partner, but very strict on. So one of the learnings, probably pre-anticipating, is you need to select your partner very well, and you need to have it contractually, even though the contract is for, you say, time and everything, it is for when it goes bad. That's the place, okay?
Exactly. And today, of course, you have partners in all these different places, so you've learned a lot on how to deal with people and situations on the ground.
Every situation is different, so I wish to say we learned it. We still learn every time. So we're direct Morocco alone. In Nigeria, we're direct alone. In Nigeria, we cannot, because of the local legislation does not allow you. So there we have a partner. But I think the fit of the partner is nearly more important than anything else. Not what he does, not which field he's worked in. It is the character, the fit of the person.
And that's kind of down to the person and the kind of, rather than the company he represents.
Down to the person.
We're going to come to that, and that's very, very interesting. I want to hear a little bit from Karl, how you guys started in Africa, because you're a much more recent story.
Sure. No, as I said, obviously we had the history very similarly in Libya, but then it wasn't really, it did not lead on to other, Libya was kind of its own story, it did not lead on to other markets. So what happened was we were, let's say, wanting to grow in the distribution space, and obviously we had, let's say, key relationships with some multinationals, and it was an opportunity very similar to what you said. So we were pitching for one country, and they said, no, we're not going to give you that country, but you can try. In this case, you can, we want a distributor for Rwanda, for example. So this came up.
The client came up with the
supplier came up with the country. So we were intending a different country, but we very happily ended up with a great country, and then we grew it from there. So then, rather than going wide, we went deep. So we said, okay, we're going to set up in Rwanda in this case, and the country is really is really the kind of place you want to invest in. So then we said, okay, if we can distribute A, we can distribute B, C, and D
from the same base in Rwanda.
Exactly, and we've grown that base. We've grown that base, and today we have 80 people in Rwanda. We have warehouses all across the country, and we can distribute a range of products.
Exactly.
All FMCG. So obviously we're not distributing fridges and stuff. It has to be kind of it has to make sense, has to fit. And that obviously that success in Rwanda has given us the opportunity to look at other countries, because obviously once you do a good job in one place, then your supplier, your principal says, okay, if you're doing a good job here, you can do a good job somewhere else.
And even you grow in confidence as well. That you
exactly, and you start to figure out what works, what doesn't work, But it's every country is very different to the other, even when it comes to partners. So in Rwanda, we don't have a partner. We're there directly. But other countries, obviously, depending on legislation, you need to see if you need to have a partner or not.
Exactly. But I wanted to ask you, from your experience, and Chris as well, what makes, North Africa and Sub-Saharan Africa, or Francophile Africa or Anglophile Africa kind of different? Because we tend to think of Africa as one.
It's a bit like the Americans say they're going to Europe, right? And they're not making any distinction. Like Europe is one place. Africa is extremely, you can't compare. It's extremely diverse. So, you can't compare North Africa with Sub-Saharan Africa, with South Africa, with the West of Africa. It's all very different, the same as, anywhere else, really. So, for us, it's very much, we look at a country very in depth and specifically, because each country is completely different to each other.
And you see kind of to understand the culture and the mechanics.
The culture, legislation, everything,
What, from your experience, Chris, what makes, North Africa and South Africa and the other countries kind of different from each other in the way they do things on a daily basis, like?
One, it's mentality as well, and culture, most of Buddhist culture, okay? So North Africa is Arab land.
Okay.
So it's known, and they look towards Europe. So the whole aim in life is Europe. They want to copy Europe, they want to migrate towards Europe, that is their goal. Okay, if you get, for example, Nike had tried to put the head office in South Africa. because they thought they could manage Africa from South Africa. And they wanted to sponsor the Soweto Marathon and say, this is for Africans, we're doing for Africa. North Africans are absolutely not interested in South Africa.
Okay.
For them, it's a world apart. They live in totally different mind frames and everything. So the culture is very different. And Sub-Sahara is very different as well. So you get the west side, which is more Anglo. The far west is French, but you have Nigeria, which is very much Anglophile. So obviously very connected to the UK and everything. Kenya, similarly. Okay, and the cultures are very different. I mean, Nigeria has 200 plus languages in one country.
Within the country.
It's not even the country itself is more diverse than Europe.
Exactly.
So,
which is the country, from your experience or that of your colleagues, is kind of most challenging to do business in Africa?
From our experience so far, has been Nigeria.
Okay.
I'd say that. But that is limited from what we do.
Exactly.
There are other countries we haven't even gone into because it's so difficult to get either foreign currency or even to get into work. So
where
I can't
the
say
basics are not even in place.
I can only comment about where we've been.
Exactly. And which has been kind of the easiest or kind of the most positive experience? Morocco,
Morocco is easiest to set up and everything.
And why is that? The legislation?
Legislation, so it's based on the French law, but they also attract foreigners. So their aim is to try and get a lot of FDI into the country.
Kind of they're used to, they're set up for
a lot
FDI.
of multinationals set up their base for Africa into Morocco, so this aeronautical, this production. So they try and get foreigners.
Exactly.
The tax environment is not friendly, but they still at least do the base for them.
Exactly. And Rwanda and Djibouti, how has the experience been in terms of geography?
It's mostly really the success or lack of success is mostly, I find, not down to us doing it right or doing it wrong, essentially. And this is a good example, Djibouti, Rwanda, because our first experience in East Africa was Djibouti. But the reality is it wasn't particularly successful in Djibouti. It was down to us, not down to the country, because we didn't really have our game plan didn't turn out to be right in the sense that we based ourselves in the free zone. We didn't have a local team. We tried to remote control it from Malta. These things all don't work, basically. That is what
the assumptions were wrong in the first
place. Yes, exactly. Obviously, it's a learning process. So it's not really the country which enables you to be successful or not. It's really how you approach it. So you have to have the courage, and you have to have, you have to put your money where your mouth, and you have to go and you have to invest on the ground in our business. You can't do it by remote control. So for us, Djibouti could have been more successful if we had done the right things. And obviously we did not repeat the same mistakes in Rwanda. In Rwanda, we immediately found good people. We opened an office. We employed people. We have a very good team from Malta who is there, very often, trying to, kind of
training.
Exactly, training but so we found this down to us. Obviously, there are some countries where there are political issues which are not really the fault of the people working there or living there, but there are issues which it could be with the banking system or just kind of war, essentially.
Exactly.
And these kind of,
so they're showstoppers.
Exactly. So, but I would say that's what we learned mostly. That you need to be on the ground. You have to be there.
One thing which is very interesting is, and I guess the reason why a lot of companies are interested in Africa. In your case, you both represent, principals who are kind of multinationals themselves, who obviously see a lot of potential in Africa. What has been your experience in terms of whether Africa is in reality, an up-and-coming, very important market for every sector?
So with the principals, so let's take Nike into consideration, something we do. So we attack Africa in two ways, okay? We have direct presence in some countries, and we'll continue expanding, but we also do distribution. So we distribute to around 24 countries at the moment from the 34, because some of them, there's absolutely nothing inside there. But we have a bonded warehouse in Malta, so we get the product here and we can supply. So the principles, what they're looking for is partners who can do more than one territory. Because what they're doing is everywhere they're growing bigger, but they want to restrict it to fewer partners. They squeeze you on the margin because you have more volume. Okay, but they're giving you more territories. And for them, it makes their life more easier. Compliance, dealing with money laundering, for them. And this is becoming more crucial than any other things. How your company is set up, doing everything right, AML procedures, everything, is becoming even more important for the principals. Okay, so the fact that being in Europe helps us. So Malta being based part of the EU really helps us from a legislation point of view and keeping a level. And from there we can go to Africa. So first of all, they see that. They see that we can handle more than one country. So for them, they had 10, 12 partners in Africa, and they consolidated them.
Okay.
So now there are only 2.
Exactly.
It's just Egypt, and the rest of Africa is us and them directly in South Africa and beyond. So there's nobody else. So for them, they're getting that benefit of scale and ease of doing business for them.
Exactly. And I guess also they have their own research telling them that, there's a middle class which is growing, and therefore the kind of product you distribute will
So
be more
if they come to
in
the consumer, there's 1.2 billion people in Africa. Okay, it's diverse. It's not China's in one country or those diverse regions, but Africa's spread all over. But the population is very young. Okay, average age expectancy is very low in Africa compared to Europe. Okay, so how can I say it, our target consumer bracket, especially us selling sportswear and everything, is prime for the brands because it is 18 to 30 is probably 60% of the population.
Is in that bracket, exactly.
So it's spot on for them. So they see this, but also the price point is silly because in most countries you have duties. Morocco, you have 40% duty.
Okay.
So the goods are more expensive, 25% more expensive than in Europe.
Okay.
So you're talking a nation where your average salary could be between 200 to 400 euros. I'm talking the low, the retail, not if you talk office.
Exactly.
Morocco's could be even 2,000. Okay, well, you have the highest priced goods in the world, probably.
Okay.
So it's quite a...
People consume because there's an aspiration and all
But it's nowhere close to the levels of expectations of Europe. So if Nike say you sell $1 per person in the country 10 years ago, you will get nowhere close to that.
Exactly.
You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yet obviously they see this huge potential and the importance of partnering with people like you to actually kind of get to this kind of growing market. Yeah.
We see something very similar. So let's say the companies we are distributing for, it's a very similar situation. So they want to deal with companies that do things right, especially from the compliance, and that's very heavy. So, okay, it's a pain, but it gives us it's actually an advantage for companies like us, And also they would like to deal with less partners. It's less complex, and we find they want to concentrate on what they are good at, which is manufacturing and marketing their products and coming up with new products.
Whereas they leave the distribution to a trusted party who's in the EU and yet has access.
Exactly, and also we are finding that, for example, in East Africa, there is that's called the East African Community, which is similar to the European Union, where obviously the East African countries, collaborate, and they try and obviously encourage big companies to manufacture within the community. So obviously the issue of import taxation is big, especially when products need to be affordable, because obviously the population still has a way to go, to be able to have the spending power as you have in Europe. So, what we are finding is more and more companies are setting up manufacturing bases there to kind of, to invest in the country, but also to have to pay less import duties and make the product more affordable, and work with distributors who are, serious. So for us, these are all positive things, and encourage us to invest even more, into these.
Has there been an impact as yet on this, Africa, free trade area, which is a huge, essentially?
Never happened. It's political. They've announced it. Zero impact.
On the ground so far. Okay. So aspirations only, or kind of a bit of an ambition only to become, a bloc, an economic bloc.
Look, if you import product into Morocco, and then from Morocco I send it to Nigeria, I'll have to pay duties in Morocco and in Nigeria.
At least at the moment it's like that. Exactly.
No.
But it seems to be going in that direction.
For production, so in East Africa, I think it's called.
Exactly.
If you produce in like Egypt, Kenya,
yes, correct.
I'm not sure Ethiopia and these, if you produce in country, then you have the transit of good without tax. So that is extremely interesting, but unfortunately none of our principles so far produce there. We're trying, but when it comes to footwear and apparel, it's a challenge.
We're talking about volume FMCGs here, so obviously for that, it works.
I wanted to, discuss a little bit as well the kind of setup you have in Africa. You, Karl, employ people in Africa in your distribution centers. Same with you, Chris, in not just your retail but also your kind of distribution centers and all that. How do you find doing business with people in Africa in general? Again, you can't generalize, but what lessons have you learned in dealing with people from a meeting to anything else which you do?
as you said, obviously it varies differently. However, for example, if I had to mention Rwanda, I mean, it was an extremely good experience in the sense that, you know, the laws are pretty similar to ours, you know. You find excellent lawyers and, you know, you find all the big, you know, like PwC, and you find, you know, so who work with the Malta, so, you know, we can work with the same people. So you find all of these services. So for us, it was about selecting the best possible advisors, you know, in the country to really get the best advice. But it was a very good experience, and not just in Rwanda. So obviously you need to be able to identify who to try and work with in a country. So we try and use, let's say, our Maltese lawyers to find out, you know, who should we work with in Djibouti, who should we work with in
terms of partners, who to work with?
No, in terms of legal advice. You know, the partners is, as you said, the most critical thing, and it's the most difficult thing to find.
Because it's purely a judgment call.
It's a judgment. Okay, obviously there's things you can do, but at the end of the day, it's the person, like you said. You know, you need to be able to. You have to have some common culture there and values.
And you've had your stories, no, of partnership going wrong, and then you found, you know, the right ones later.
Yes, we still have stories coming up. We've had people, companies we've brought up from. They had 2 stores. We brought them up to a $60 million business. In 5 years, and
so kind of they grew with you to this extent.
And it still ruptured because they still thought that they did not need further support, or they became bigger than us. You know, so. You get this.
You always have that. And what's your kind of presence?
Not always. I can't say it's always. Okay, it happened once.
Exactly.
It didn't happen all the time. So thank God it don't happen once. But it's a difficult one. It's not an easy one.
Like Karl was saying, choosing the right, you know, it's really about a person in the end, you know, and choosing that person on those partners on the ground becomes really difficult. In terms of employees, you know, and work ethic and all that, has it been?
I mean, it's diverse. Okay, so we've got a bit of a diverse. I would tell you, education is good in most cases. People are willing, very willing to learn. So opposite of Malta, you find workforce. You find people ready to work. In fact, we should get some to train to Malta and everything. We should do something because it would be good for us because we need people and everything. But you find the workforce. You need to educate them. You need to train them. Sometimes you have to go, in certain cases, you have to go down to the basics. Because some cultures, they don't like saying no. They will tell you yes to everything you tell them.
That's interesting.
Whether or not they really understood. So they would just say yes, everything, not a problem. And then you actually ask them to repeat, and you notice they're struggling a bit. So there is a difference, but normally you find pretty well educated people.
Your experience, Karl, has been the same?
No, it's all down to culture, right? So we also have business not in Africa, so you have obviously very, very large. I mean, with the workforce, for example, I would say in Rwanda it was a good experience in the sense that you get a very good level of education. You have people who are very willing to work and very willing to kind of to learn the way you do things, and you know, especially if they've never done it before. So there was absolutely no issue with that. Obviously, there are very important cultural. So, as you said, in some places there is not really the culture to question, for example, right? So, if you are my boss and you are saying rubbish, right, I'm not going to tell you, you know, and or if I see a problem approaching, in some cultures, there isn't that let's say. The confidence to tell. It's not my place to tell you that's something. So the problem, you will know the problem when it hits, even if somebody knows it's coming.
Could have anticipated.
Just because culturally, it's not. It is not. You know, it is not. Some cultures not in your place to say.
And I guess it's partly training, partly understanding.
They don't tolerate us. They want to go to Europe. Everywhere you go to, you know, we speak to a guy in Nigeria. I'm doing my CCA because I want to go to the UK. Yeah, we just employed you. You know, why are you telling me you want to go to the UK? You know? But for them, the dream is always Europe. So far, the majority.
And foreign companies provide, if you like, this
training, and we get in the scope. We get people. We try and bring people over, secondments and everything. Because it's a learning curve. It's a learning curve for us as well.
I imagine, and that's really important to mention. How, you know, a lot of people listening to us and watching us would be either companies interested in Africa. How should a company kind of prepare, have some setup in place to be able to take Africa seriously because of these opportunities?
Deep pockets.
Deep pockets.
No, you have to have the willingness, I think, patience. Africa can't be, it's not a quick win.
Okay.
I wouldn't say accurate. I think our strength so far has been with doing it progressively.
Okay.
Okay, you can't rush it because we have instances where countries, they stop giving license to import. First, they implement a law saying you need a license to import, and they stop giving license to import for, in our case, it was 3 months, but there was a car industry in Algeria was stopped for 3 years.
Okay.
So if you rushed into it and you put all your eggs there, then obviously...
Yeah. So you need the patience and the long-term approach.
You need depth. You can't be one. I understand the model of going one country deep, but obviously for them, in terms of investment, it's not significant for the group overall.
Yes.
Okay, so you can't put all your cash into one place.
If it goes wrong, it can't sink you as a group of companies, and that's important.
Exactly.
So you need to spread it out. You need to do it progressively and everything, because there's always a curveball coming.
Absolutely. And that's and obviously, in markets that are kind of high return, if you like, there is a degree of high risk that comes in its very definition. Karl, what do you think?
From our point of view, what we did was we made sure we had people who really understood the country we were going to. So we made sure we acquired the right people. So as in, for example, for Rwanda, we had a person who knew Rwanda very well, worked there before, and we basically employed this person. And then, as I said before, you want to have the right kind of advisors from the legal side, financial side. If you're not going in with a partner, make sure you really understand the laws and the history and what could have gone wrong, in the last 10 years. Has anything changed dramatically in the last 10 years, from a legislation point of view, because it could happen again.
Exactly.
And you have to have the courage to go and do it, basically.
Absolutely.
But, at the end of the day, it's about, you have to take the plunge, and obviously you have to have a very strong business case. But as I said, you have to be there on the ground with the right advisors, the right people. And then you can, obviously it depends on the country, but from our experience, that's a major hurdle,
And you, for example, are there in Rwanda a lot of the time, or?
Personally, yes, I've been, 6, 7 times.
No, but kind of it's in your calendar to go often.
Of course, yes. I was there. I don't know when this is airing, but I was there last week.
Exactly.
And and there's a group of us. There's a group of 5 or 6 of us from the office in Malta who are there. Obviously, the aim is that our local management team. We don't want to build a situation where we're running show from Malta. It's not at all It is more about building a team in it's not just Rwanda. It's also we're doing similar things in other countries where we kind of try to build the capacity there, so they are as self-sufficient as possible.
And
that will allow us to grow.
Not dependent on you.
Exactly.
But at the same time, your presence there is important.
Because they're perfectly capable of doing it. It's just a matter of trying to get the same culture and the same systems and the same way of working, basically.
And same with you, Chris? You go often because you need to be present there, or you have some other form of setup?
No, we have teams which do go regularly. So normally every 3 months, there's at least one person from different business. Could be from the commercial side, so the brands. It could be logistics, HR. They all go down.
Exactly.
So we need to go, and it's not important only for monitoring, but it's also important for the locals, because they want to feel valued.
Exactly.
And people do like it. So when you go down,
it builds a relationship.
It builds a relationship. It's even with the staff. For them it's good that you go down and see them and everything. Gives them motivation.
Exactly.
They feel part of a bigger group, which counts a lot for them. So we do visit. Normally I get involved more at the beginning, the setup, or with the partners if there are partners. But the rest of the team, they frequent on a regular basis.
And what's your kind of long-term plan in Africa?
A long-term plan is we want to, ambitious as it sounds, be the leaders of sports in Africa. We have the brands to do it.
Of course.
We have some stuff in progress which can get us on a stronger footing to do it. So that is our longer-term strategy. We do fashion as well. So we've got, let's say, these 2 areas. I want to focus on them. We can't go too wide, because we need to focus.
Become leaders in Africa.
We need to be process. We have to have the right process. We can become leaders in Africa.
Fantastic. Karl, your long-term game?
Well, we're quite a young team, and let's say we've really enjoyed the experience. So we want to grow it. We have the backing of our shareholders and our board. So we want to replicate what we've done so far. The opportunities are not there. Are there? As in, it's not a matter of not having opportunities. The opportunities are. The biggest challenge is building the team, the capacity to do it. To go for them. So our plan is to look at other countries in East Africa, and even beyond that. Obviously, we still focus on North Africa, where we've been for a longer time. But yeah, there's definitely scope for growth, and we want to go for it, basically.
Chris Muscat, Karl Aquilina, thank you for sharing your experience of the risks and opportunities of doing business in Africa. If you found this podcast useful, we have others on innovation, the digital imperative, facing a crisis, and what we can learn from the world of sport. You can find them on Spotify, on International Insights, or in video format on YouTube. This podcast series is produced for TradeMalta. They are made possible thanks to the help of HSBC and their international financing solutions. We get technical help from Studio 7. Thanks for listening.